Enzo Maresca's reign so far as Chelsea manager has not been easy. Whether it's been off the pitch issues like the Enzo Fernandez saga, Conor Gallagher and Trevor Chalobah's transfer situation, or even the on the pitch performances, which whilst they have had some positives, there's been some negatives also, particularly leading to some headline worthy results in pre-season, leading already to some people being sceptical about his ability as manager, and even some of the extreme population on Twitter saying that they're Maresca out already after only a few pre-season games. So it begs the question, is Enzo Maresca doomed to fail at Chelsea? Welcome to the Jake Talks Chelsea channel. This is actually the first video on the channel where we're going to talk everything Chelsea, as you can imagine, from match reactions to transfer speculation and general Chelsea news and opinions. I'll be doing it all here on the channel, so if that sounds good to you, make sure you hit the subscribe button and smash the like button to help me get a little bit of a boost here on this first video. I'd love to hear your thoughts on Enzo Maresca in the comments, but today I'm going to talk about my opinion on whether he is doomed to fail, because I know some people that aren't Chelsea fans, that are football fans, whether it's friends, family, co-workers, whatever it might be, and all of them seem to think that Enzo Maresca isn't going to last long as Chelsea manager, based so far on pre-season, but also Chelsea's history so far under this ownership with managers. So I guess we should talk about that first as we try and answer the question, is he doomed to fail? There's been this kind of idea that Todd Boehly and co have been quite rash with their managers so far in their ownership, and I can see where that argument comes from, and I'm by no means their biggest fan currently, the ownership, but I think they get a bit of a bad rep in that situation, and I'll explain why. So if you're on the other side of the fence, at least hear me out first. Firstly, Thomas Tuchel, that's the one that I think is the strangest one, but I get it because they wanted to have their own man in charge. It happens a lot with new ownerships. I'd wish Tuchel had been kept in. I think he'd probably do better than anyone we've had so far. But the situation was he didn't last long under the new ownership. They wanted their own man, and they went out and got Graham Potter, which seemed like it could be a good move tactically in terms of moving the club forward into a long-term manager that they can have for a while. But whilst I think they did want to give him patience, and I think they showed patience, Graham Potter, it just did not go anywhere near the level that anyone expected. So far so that even if they did want to show patience, it was so bad that I don't think anyone could have predicted how bad it was, and they eventually had to part ways. That then led to Lampard till the end of the season. Obviously that was only temporary anyway, and then in comes Mauricio Pochettino. So far they had Tuchel that they kind of moved out because they wanted their own man. They got their own man, and it just did not work anywhere near the level. And then it was Poch, and Poch did okay. I actually think they were quite patient with him. At one point it looked like he was going to get the sack, or at least he could have done, but he managed to hang on, picked up some form towards the end of the season, and I think most Chelsea fans would have been okay with him going into the next year. Of course, with Pochettino, I don't think many people ever thought he'd be the man to guide us to a title, but with the way the manager market was, it seemed to make sense to hang on to Poch. But with the situation being the situation, it seemed like it was a 50-50 decision. He wanted some input on transfers by the rumours of it, and that Chelsea weren't willing to give him, which I think is something that managers should be able to have, but they parted ways mutually. It wasn't like they cut ties with him after a few losses. I think they are willing to show patience, but you have to get some results at least to back it up, and it'll be interesting to see how that goes with Maresca. So I do think there is a willingness there from the ownership to try and show patience if possible. Obviously with the Potter situation, they kind of did. It was just, Potter was so bad, and Maresca is going to need to get results. At a club like Chelsea you have to, but I think they are going to be willing to have a bit of leeway. They know it's going to take time, and I think as Chelsea fans, most people can accept that. But already after a few headline worthy pre-season results, there's a lot of people saying that he's not the man for the job, he's not the right fit, and I think there's a few reasons to this. The first one is I don't think he was many people's first choice as Chelsea candidate. It seemed like a lot of names were floated about that maybe chose better jobs that were available at the time. I'm a Chelsea fan, of course, but if a job like Barcelona's available, if a job like Bayern Munich's available, even Liverpool, in the current situation, the way that the club's run and the success that they've had, it would be easier to step into a role there than it would be Chelsea. So it was kind of a minimal transfer market when it comes to managers for the club, and for that reason, I don't think Maresca was anybody's first choice, nor do I think he was Chelsea's first choice. I mean, they can spin that whatever way they want. I don't think they went into that after losing Pochettino expecting to appoint Maresca. I think they would have had different ideas, and I'm glad that they looked at a few candidates and Maresca came forward. And you know what? It's the kind of football they want to play, and fingers crossed it does work out. But for that reason, there's already going to be some bias against him from Chelsea supporters, and they're going to take a little while to win those people over, as it always does with a new manager. But I think Maresca has got the capabilities. Now, the issue is, of course, so far the pre-season results, and that's the thing that's getting a lot of people talking. It's easy to look at the headlines so far. I mean, they had a draw against Wrexham. you know, a team they should be beating, but you can kind of forgive it. Wrexham are a team that were coming to the end of their pre-season. Chelsea, it was their first match, and fitness does play a big part in these, and how much intensity were Chelsea really going at, playing with new ideas and whatnot. You know, you could argue that each way you want to. Then there's the Celtic result, which was a little bit more harsh to look at. Then, of course, they beat Club America, looked like they were back on the way up, and now they've played Man City, and that was a game that I watched, and I actually thought the performance wasn't so bad. It was more just individual errors and lack of communication that cost us the goals. I mean, you're 2-0 down within a few minutes from a Haaland penalty. It was a bit dubious, but you know, you caused them issues yourself by the way they played with the ball and gave it away in the end for Colwill to make that foul on Haaland, or foul as we should call it, because I feel like he didn't take too much contact. But either way, Man City beat us, and the bottom line is, when you lose 4-2 to Man City in pre-season and they're the first game of the season, it's not looking too promising just yet, particularly when you see in pre-season, I think we've got Real Madrid next, maybe Inter Milan after that. Hard matches, you know, and sometimes you do wish that they'd gone for a more low-key pre-season, but it's the way the football world is. You play these big teams, you draw the big crowds in America, you get the money in, they have to promote their brand in other nations, so you can accept it. But I just wouldn't be surprised as a Chelsea fan if we lost both of the games against Madrid and Inter, and I don't think there's too much wrong with that. They're big clubs, Chelsea are as well, but of course Chelsea are in a transitional stage, and I think that's something that people need to recognise with all of these games. Now, I'm not Maresca's biggest fan in the world or anything like that, but it is going to take time. There does need to be patience shown. I'm from Leicester. I saw a lot of him last season with Leicester in the Championship in terms of the football he's playing. It's going to take a while before you can get a team playing that way, particularly when they're so used to playing the Pochettino style of football, which I think is a big change. It's not like we've gone from one possession manager to another. I think we are going to need an extra bit of patience here, because you're going from a man with Poch who people say he didn't have any tactics. He definitely did, but it was a lot more based on your ingenuity, your running, your power, your stamina, going all game, giving it your passion and your all, which is why players like Conor Gallagher really suited Pochettino's system. With Maresca, it's a bit different. It's a completely different style of play. It's not often a team has more possession than Man City by a big distance, but we did in pre-season. Again, you can argue Chelsea had a better squad, Man City didn't have their best squad on, but, you know, Pep's been there for a few years. The academy's playing Pep's football. They're all ready to step up. You've got players in there who are already a big part of the core squad. Chelsea are not only trying to play a new system, but also there's a whole issue you've got to contend with new players coming in. I mean, Chelsea haven't made the most signings in this window compared to other years, but there are a lot of players that are coming back. Take Romeo Lavia, basically is a new signing this season. Hasn't played much last year. Even Christopher Nkunku hasn't played much last year. Lots of players playing football that are going to be loaned out also and won't be here for a long time. Players trialling new positions, Reece James inverting into the midfield. There is a lot that Chelsea are going to have to contend with this year in terms of transitioning to this style of football, and I think patience does need to be shown. One issue that might crop up for Maresca, though, is the fact that this team is so young. Now, this can both work in different ways for him. It can have a positive effect and a negative. The positive being, with young players, they might be more manageable in terms of getting new ideas and playing a new style of football. It's not like they've played a certain way all their life. This is a chance now to get them playing a new style, but also you lose that experience, and Chelsea's transfer strategy seems to be showing no signs of change. Maresca hasn't got an influence on that in terms of buying young players and not buying established players. And I like buying all the wonder kids. It's great to see them all come in Chelsea, but at the end of the day, you need some experience alongside that. And when your most experienced player in Thiago Silva leads, I mean, we already had one of the youngest squads, if not the youngest squad, and now you take Thiago Silva away and that squad has just dropped massively because he was one of the oldest players in the league. So yeah, this is a team that is very young, and that might go against Maresca in terms of the lack of experience, but it also could be a benefit for him of getting them playing this football. I mean, when you take Raheem Sterling, Cucurella, they're some of the most experienced players in the team. It's a crazy thought. It's a lot to deal with as a manager. He hasn't necessarily got his out-and-out leaders to rely upon. Obviously, you've got the leaders in terms of the captaincy, like Reece James and, of course, Ben Chilwell, but how much an influence do they have over everyone? I'm not necessarily sure. So Maresca has got to contend with that. There's a lack of experience. You're completely changing philosophy to what they've had before, and we need to accept there's going to be mistakes. And I go back to that Man City game. If you look at all 4 goals, it's not like Man City have completely outplayed us. You could argue their press was good, but most of those mistakes came from individual errors, trying to play it out the back. I mean, you've got Tosin Adarabioyo in the defence, getting completely used to playing alongside new defenders, and those defenders getting used to him. Pre-season's tough no matter what, with players coming back from injury, a lack of fitness, but when you contend with a whole new philosophy and new signings, yes, many other clubs have to deal with this, but there's always eyes on Chelsea, there's pressure on Chelsea, and Maresca's going to have to deal with that. And I think so far, from what I've seen in pre-season, despite the results, I can see the promise, and I don't just want to be optimistic for the sake of being optimistic. This generally will be quite a positive channel because I try and stay positive, but I think there is promise there. The way they're playing, the style of play that he got on playing against Man City. Be interesting to see how it carries over against Real Madrid and Inter. And also, of course, you're going to have the likes of Cucurella and Cole Palmer, almost guaranteed starters, coming back into the first team sometime soon. It'll be interesting to see how they get integrated. But I think anyone that's already going to be anti-Maresca purely based on pre-season is looking at it all wrong, because even if they wanted, Pep Guardiola, Mikel Arteta to come in, they would need time to implement those situations too, and they prove that. I mean, you could argue Guardiola could have potentially got sacked in his first season, and Arteta, we all know how close he was to the sack, but they showed patience, they let them develop their style of football, got players in that suited it, got rid of the players that didn't, and before you knew it, they had functioning teams and now competing for titles on a regular basis. And Chelsea have the squad to get there. They might not have it just yet in terms of ability out and out, but this is a team that has a lot of potential, and you don't just want to rely on that, of course. But I think if we give the patience to Maresca, I think if we give him time, he's got as much chance of anyone of getting a tune out of this squad. I don't necessarily know if he is the man, but he is one of the men out there that could definitely do a job with this Chelsea team. I don't think there's any manager you could just bring in and have a quick fix and suddenly win everything. I don't think we're at that stage anymore. It's not like we have winners in the squad already like we used to with Lampard, Terry, Drogba. Those days are gone. This is a completely new era, and it's going to take a while before we get up to any kind of level to compete for a title. I think aim number one for this season will be top four. I think that'll almost be put on Maresca as his challenge to achieve, and I think he can do it, but I think there will be a few things he's going to have to deal with outside of just the pre-season results and trying to get the club playing a different way. That will come in time, but one thing he is going to have to deal with, I think, is Enzo Fernandez in terms of how he plays in the system. I'm not necessarily sure from what I've seen so far that he is going to be a player that suits Maresca's style, but with how much he costs and the player he is, he's too good to be left out, so they might have to work that around to find a way for him to get into the squad. But also, one issue that doesn't really fall on Maresca that might end up affecting him massively is the squad size. It feels like we've got to the point again where we've got too many players, and I'm hoping by the time the season actually kicks off, we'll have a few of the names out the door that are being linked away. Whether I want them to leave or not is another question. Like Trevor Chalobah, I wish I just kept him, and no offence to Tosin Adarabioyo, but it doesn't really make sense to bring him in when you've got Chalobah at the club. I suppose they're trying to sell Chalobah for the pure profit side of things, and that's a whole different thing that we can get into in another video. But, Chalobah's situation is still not clear. Conor Gallagher's looks to be, but isn't confirmed. You've got Broja, Datro Fofana, Cassidy, Angelo's still at the club. I'm assuming he'll get loaned out. And that's just a few of the names that Chelsea have got to contend with currently in terms of moving them on, finding them homes, or bringing them into the first team. Because the bigger the squad you have, the harder it's going to be for Chelsea to try and integrate these ideas when he can't have as much time with all the individual players. You saw what the effect of a big squad could have under Potter and Lampard. I mean, Lukaku, that still hasn't been sorted. You want him to get out the door at some point as well. So to sum it up, I think there's going to be issues early on for Maresca. I think he's going to have to deal with it. And I think we as Chelsea fans need to expect it's not going to take, 2 days and suddenly we're playing great football. I might say this, and we might now beat Real Madrid, Inter, and then Man City in the league, but, it's pretty unlikely. We're going to have to wait a bit of time. It might be 3 or 4 weeks into the Premier League season before we start seeing the ideas really coming through as he settles on his first squad. And that's something to note as well. So far, he hasn't found his best squad yet. He also hasn't found his best tactic. For everyone saying that he always sticks to the same thing, yes, he did at Leicester, but so far in Chelsea's pre-season, he's tried some different ideas, whether it's Mudryk on the right, Gusto at left wing, not things I necessarily agree with, but he's trying things, he's trying to work things out, and that's what pre-season's for. So don't take too much heart, I don't think, in what's happened so far in pre-season in terms of the results. Focus more on the performances, and I think there is definitely something there that can be worked upon. If we can just cut out the individual mistakes, we could have gave Man City a pretty good game there, and who knows, maybe come the first day of the season, we might be able to do so, but I think it will take a while. I think we need to show patience. In terms of, is Enzo Maresca doomed to fail? I don't think so. He certainly could fail, and it wouldn't be surprising, but I think he's got a good chance of making a success of this. We just need to show some patience and hopefully get some early results to try and get some momentum behind this team. But there we go. That's the first video done on the Jake Talks Chelsea channel. So comment down below your thoughts on the situation, and also if there's anything I can do to make these videos better audio, camera wise. I make videos on other channels as well, but this is the first time I'm kind of doing no video game. It's just me talking to the camera. So if you have enjoyed it, smash the like button, subscribe so you don't miss out on our next video, and I'll see you next time. Thank you and goodbye.